morning. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 23, through chapter 16, verse 23. All the land was weeping loudly as all these people were leaving, as the king was crossing over the Kidron Valley. All the people were leaving on the road that leads to the desert. Zadok and all the Levites who were with him were carrying the Ark of the Covenant of God. When they positioned the Ark of God, Abiathar offered sacrifices until all the people had finished leaving the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Take the Ark of God back to the city. If I find favor in the Lord's sight, he will bring me back and enable me to see both it and his dwelling place again. However, if he should say, 'I do not take pleasure in you,' then he will deal with me in a way that he considers appropriate." The king said to Zadok the priest, "Are you a seer? Go back to the city in peace. Your son Ahimaaz and Abiathar's son Jonathan may go with you and Abiathar. Look, I will be waiting at the fords of the desert until word from you reaches me." So Zadok and Abiathar took the Ark of God back to Jerusalem and remained there. As David was going up the Mount of Olives, he was weeping as he went. His head was covered and his feet were bare. All the people who were with him also had their heads covered and were weeping as they went up. Now David had been told, "Ahithophel has sided with the conspirators who are with Absalom." So David prayed, "Make the advice of Ahithophel foolish, O Lord." When David reached the summit, where he used to worship God, Hushai the Archite met him with his clothes torn and dirt on his head. David said to him, "If you leave with me, you will be a burden to me, but you will be able to counter the advice of Ahithophel if you go back to the city and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant, O king. Previously I was your father's servant, and now I will be your servant.' Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, will be there with you. Everything you hear in the king's palace, you must tell Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Furthermore, their two sons are there with them, Zadok's son Ahimaaz and Abiathar's son Jonathan. You must send them to me with any information you hear." So David's friend Hushai arrived in the city just as Absalom was entering Jerusalem. When David had gone a short way beyond the summit, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, was there to meet him. He had a couple of donkeys that were saddled, and on them were 200 loaves of bread, 100 raisin cakes, 100 baskets of summer fruit, and a container of wine. The king asked Ziba, "Why did you bring these things?" Ziba replied, "The donkeys are for the king's family to ride on. The loaves of bread and the summer fruit are for the attendants to eat, and the wine is for those who get exhausted in the desert." The king asked, "Where is your master's grandson?" Ziba replied to the king, "He remains in Jerusalem, for he said, 'Today the house of Israel will give back to me my grandfather's kingdom.'" The king said to Ziba, "Everything that was Mephibosheth's now belongs to you." Ziba replied, I bow before you. May I find favor in your sight, my lord the king." Then King David reached Bahurim. There a man from Saul's extended family, named Shimei, son of Gera, came out, yelling curses as he approached. He threw stones at David and all King David's servants, as well as all the people and all the soldiers who were on his right and on his left. As he yelled curses, Shimei said, "Leave, leave, you man of bloodshed, you wicked man. The Lord has punished you for all the spilled blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you rule. Now the Lord has given the kingdom into the hand of your son Absalom. Disaster has overtaken you, for you are a man of bloodshed." Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut off his head." But the king said, "What do we have in common, you sons of Zeruiah? If he curses because the Lord has said to him, 'Curse David,' who can say to him, 'Why have you done this?'" Then David said to Abishai and to all his servants, "My own son, my very own flesh and blood, is trying to take my life. So also now this Benjaminite. Leave him alone, so that he can curse, for the Lord has spoken to him. Perhaps the Lord will notice my affliction, and this day grant me good in place of his curse." So David and his men went on their way, but Shimei kept going along the side of the hill opposite him, yelling curses as he threw stones and dirt at them. The king and all the people who were with him arrived exhausted at their destination, where David refreshed himself. Now when Absalom and all the men of Israel arrived in Jerusalem, Ahithophel was with him. When David's friend Hushai the Archite came to Absalom, Hushai said to him, "Long live the king! Long live the king!" Absalom said to Hushai, "Do you call this loyalty to your friend? Why didn't you go with your friend?" Hushai replied to Absalom, "No, I will be loyal to the one whom the Lord, these people, and all the men of Israel have chosen. Moreover, whom should I serve? Should it not be his son? Just as I served your father, so I will serve you." Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give us your advice. What should we do?" Ahithophel replied to Absalom, "Have sex with your father's concubines, whom he left to care for the palace. All Israel will hear that you have made yourself repulsive to your father. Then your followers will be motivated to support you." So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and Absalom had sex with his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. In those days, Ahithophel's advice was considered as valuable as a prophetic revelation. Both David and Absalom highly regarded the advice of Ahithophel. So Absalom comes and makes himself king in Jerusalem, which David flees with a whole bunch of people, and they try to take the Ark of God with them as well, but David leaves these priests, Zadok and Abiathar, as not only to leave the Ark of God in Jerusalem, but to act as informants for him. Also, his friend Hushai, who was an advisor to him, also serves as an advisor to Absalom, except he's a spy. So, interesting. Also, the story of Ziba here, saying that Mephibosheth betrayed David, is false, as is later revealed. So, I wonder what his motive is for bringing all this stuff to David. Want something out of it, that's for sure. And then Absalom sleeps with all his father's concubines. Oof. Okay, John chapter 18, verse 25 through chapter 19, verse 22. Meanwhile, Simon Peter was standing in the courtyard warming himself. They said to him, "You aren't one of his disciples too, are you?" Peter denied it. "I am not." One of the high priest's slaves, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, said, "Did I not see you in the orchard with him?" Then Peter denied it again, and immediately a rooster crowed. Then they brought Jesus from Caiaphas to the Roman governor's residence. Now it was very early in the morning. They did not go into the governor's residence, so they could not be ceremonially defiled, but could eat the Passover meal. So Pilate came outside to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They replied, "If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate told them, "Take him yourselves and pass judgment on him according to your own law." The Jewish leaders replied, "We cannot legally put anyone to death." This happened to fulfill the word Jesus had spoken when he indicated what kind of death he was going to die. So Pilate went back into the governor's residence, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "Are you saying this on your own initiative, or have others told you about me?" Pilate answered, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own people and your chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus replied, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my servants would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish authorities. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Then Pilate said, "So you are a king?" Jesus replied, "You say that I am a king. For this reason I was born, and for this reason I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked, "What is truth?" When he had said this, he went back outside to the Jewish leaders and announced, "I find no basis for an accusation against him. But it is your custom that I release one prisoner for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release for you the King of the Jews?" Then they shouted back, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a revolutionary. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged severely. The soldiers braided a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they clothed him in a purple robe. They came up to him again and again and said, "Hail, King of the Jews," and they struck him repeatedly in the face. Again Pilate went out and said to the Jewish leaders, "Look, I am bringing him out to you, so that you may know that I find no reason for an accusation against him." So Jesus came outside, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Look, here is the man." When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they shouted out, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said, "You take him and crucify him. Certainly I find no reason for an accusation against him." The Jewish leaders replied, "We have a law, and according to our law he ought to die, because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard what they said, he was more afraid than ever, and he went back into the governor's residence and said to Jesus, "Where do you come from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. So Pilate said, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Don't you know I have the authority to release you and to crucify you?" Jesus replied, "You would have no authority over me at all, unless it was given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of greater sin." From this point on, Pilate tried to release him, but the Jewish leaders shouted out, "If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar. Everyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus outside and sat down on the judgment seat in the place called the Stone Pavement, Gabbatha in Aramaic. Now it was the day of preparation for the Passover, about noon. Pilate said to the Jewish leaders, "Look, here is your king." Then they shouted out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate asked, "Shall I crucify your king?" The high priest replied, "We have no king except Caesar." Then Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus, and carrying his own cross, he went out to the place called the Place of the Skull, called in Aramaic Golgotha. There they crucified him along with two others, one on each side, with Jesus in the middle. Pilate also had a notice written and fastened to the cross, which read, "Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews." Thus many of the Jewish residents of Jerusalem read this notice, because the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the notice was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. Then the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate, "Do not write, 'the King of the Jews,' but rather, 'This man said, I am King of the Jews.'" Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." Yeah, commonly the cause for the crucifixion would be written above the person's head, because crucifixion was as much about torturing the person being accused as it was trying to dissuade other people from committing the same crime. So, yeah. Also, what Pilate did was not right here at all, and that even before, he says that he has no reason to in John chapter 18, verse 38, it says, "I find no basis," Pilate said, "I find no basis for an accusation against him." But then he has him flogged severely in 19:1, and has a crown of thorns and a purple robe put on him. And he's struck in the face repeatedly. And even after all of that, so he flogs severely an innocent man. And then he gives in and crucifies Jesus according to the desires of the Pharisees and officers here. So, just wanted to address again. In 1837, then Pilate said, "So you are a king?" And Jesus replied, "You say that I am a king. For this reason I was born, and for this reason I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." I don't remember exactly what the Greek is. Oh, let me back up a second here. With how this is translated, it's kind of difficult. It's easy if you're just looking at this to be, I think, a bit confused about what Jesus is saying here, and to put your own intonation on it. You say that I am a king. That is, oh, I'm not claiming to be a king at all, as some Muslims or Unitarians might claim. But what Jesus is saying here is su legos. I can't remember exactly how it's said, but it's a phrase that essentially means I am, but not in the way that you're thinking. And it goes along perfectly with what Jesus is saying in verse 36, which is, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my servants would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish authorities. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here. I am a king, but not of this world." So, okay, Psalm 119, verses 113 to 128. Samech, I hate people with divided loyalties, but I love your law. You are my hiding place and my shield. I find hope in your word. Turn away from me, you evil men, so that I can observe the commands of my God. Sustain me as you promised, so that I will live. Do not disappoint me. Support me, so that I will be delivered. Then I will focus on your statutes continually. You despise all who stray from your statutes, for they are deceptive and unreliable. You remove all the wicked of the earth like slag. Therefore I love your rules. My body trembles because I fear you. I am afraid of your judgments. Ayin, I do what is fair and right. Do not abandon me to my oppressors. Guarantee the welfare of your servant. Do not let the arrogant oppress me. My eyes grow tired as I wait for your deliverance, for your reliable promise to be fulfilled. Show your servant your loyal love. Teach me your statutes. I am your servant. Give me insight so that I can understand your rules. It is time for the Lord to act. They break your law. For this reason, I love your commands more than gold, even purest gold. For this reason, I carefully follow all your precepts. I hate all deceitful actions. Sorry, but backing up just a bit, the Pharisees were always on Jesus about breaking the Sabbath, but they were constantly trying to either kill him or seize him on the Sabbath as well, which one would think takes a good deal of work to capture a person and to bring them in. So they realized implicitly that doing good, that is, doing justice on the Sabbath, was lawful, but yet they didn't extend that same sort of consideration to Jesus' actions to heal people on the Sabbath. Yeah. Carrying on, Proverbs chapter 16, verses 10 and 11. The divine verdict is in the words of the king. His pronouncements must not act treacherously against justice. Honest scales and balances are from the Lord. All the weights in the bag are his handiwork. Yeah. And I think 16:10 kind of goes along with what Jesus was saying to Pilate, in that you would have no authority over me unless it was given to you from above. The divine verdict is in the words of the king. His pronouncements must not act treacherously against justice. Authority is granted from God, and those in positions of authority must not abuse the power that they've been given. Also, honesty and integrity are valued by God, and that he's again promoting honest and fair weights in trade. Okay, well, thank you for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.